Hi, Read 508. This is Dr. Keisler, and as promised in this week's checklist, I am giving you a little bit of an update on that forum post feedback that I gave you last week. I had a few students email me a little bit confused, and through conversations with those students, I think I figured out what is going on or what happened. So this is the rubric you can find on your syllabus regarding the quality and the criteria for forum posting, and this describes what you need to do to get a 5, to get a 4, to get a 3, to get a 2, to get a 1, or obviously to get a 0 if you did not contribute at all. So I think this is what happened. This class used to be graded by accumulating points over the semester, and so let's say your total forum posts were worth 60 points for the semester. Each week you got 5 points by doing your forum post. Towards that 60 points, another assignment may have been worth 80 points, and then you had this total, and then the point totals were broken down and assigned kind of a grade range. Well, that to me gets very confusing, particularly if an assignment changes or assignments are worth different amounts, and sometimes the weights get off. And so what I did was I changed the class this semester to just a weighted means. And so, for example, your forum posts are not worth 60 points towards the total, but rather they're just worth 25% of your grade. Now, part of the reason I did this is because it gives me flexibility as to some weeks I could allow those forum posts to be worth more. But in changing this, what I did was I erased a column that was here that described to you on weeks that your forum post required you to respond to others, the distribution is a little bit different. So that's what I had done in the past, because remember, in the past I was trying to always make each week be worth, let's say, 5 points. And so this would be how those 5 points were distributed on a week where you just were posting and not responding. And then I had a column next to it that described what this would look like in terms of the point distribution if it was a week where you were writing an original post and then you were responding, because I still wanted to keep it within the 5 points, because I had already determined for my grade distribution how many points I was allotting total towards the class participation activities. So I meant to erase this column, but then what happened is in my grade book I kept everything as 5, and I kept grading them as if I hadn't changed this, like I've done every semester. So this is where it got confusing for you. You're probably confused now, but anyway. On weeks where you had to put your own post up and then reply to 2 classmates, I was still awarding 5 points. I should have been awarding 7 points. What I should have been doing is giving you 5 points for your original, up to 5 points for your original response, and then 1 point for each of the responses you provided. In past semesters, because I was keeping it at the 5 points, I would award up to 3 points for the original post and then 1 point for each response. And then that's what I kept doing this semester. So I apologize. This is kind of how I've always graded, and I wanted to change it this semester, but then in keeping up with all of the classes that I'm teaching and what I've changed and what I haven't, I kind of forgot that I meant to change this for you. And so I took it out of the rubric like I was supposed to, but then I didn't follow through, and I kept grading the way that I've always graded. So on those weeks in the past, if we had a response to 2 classmates due and you received a 3 on your original post, you indeed got full credit for that post. So I think some folks were like, I'm doing as good of a job, and I think I'm following the rubric, but I'm not getting that 5, I'm only getting 3. Well, I was only letting you get up to 3 on those. So if you got a 3, that was the highest you could get, and then you were getting 1 point if you did each of the responses. So in the grade book, if you look, you're seeing that you got a 5 out of 5. So you got full credit, even though your original post says you got 3 points. That's how I was grading it. If you got a 4 out of 5, that probably meant that your original response, I only gave you 2 out of the 3 points I was allowing for it, and then I gave you 1 point for each of your responses. So if you go to your grade book and you see from this point, from the beginning of the semester to week 7, that you have 5 points, you got full credit for all of those CPAs, regardless of what the points inside the original forum had said. Because when you look at the forum, you can see your score, because there's a little pull down menu where I can pop in the score. So typically what I deduct the most points for is either your original response was not up to par, or you didn't respond to both students, both classmates that you needed to. So that's where people lose it. And then at the end, the computer tallies them all for a possible score of up to 5. So this is what we're going to do. Since I have now everybody focused on that one rubric that I provided in the syllabus, we're going to go with the rubric that is there. So on weeks that, like this week, where you just need to post an original post and you're not required to respond to classmates, this week will be worth 5 points. Next week, if we have a post, or we will have a post where you need to put your own up and then you need to respond to 2 classmates, I'm going to make that worth 7. So you can get 7 out of 7 points. This week you can only get 5 out of 5. So whatever score you see on your original post is the score you're getting in the grade book. But then next week, and from moving forward, moving on from here, what we will do is make your original post always worth up to 5 points, and then you can add the 2 additional points by responding appropriately to your classmates. So that one point for each of those responses is for what I call a competent response. I don't think you need a rubric for it, because it really depends on the original response, kind of how you can respond. So I'm not going to require that necessarily like you cite, or it needs to be a certain amount of words, but you will not receive any points if you don't respond, obviously, and then you won't get any points if you just have like one sentence or a few words. So keep in mind that I think we're doing a good enough job of responding that you don't need a rubric for what the response to your classmates should look like. Those I've been pretty satisfied with. So remember then, it will say, and it'll say it in the grade book, so you'll be able to see. And it always tells you what your score is out of how many points were available. So like this week it'll say up to 5, so your score that you get is reflective of how well you did against a scale of 5. And then next week it will be reflective of how well you did against a scale of 7. All right? So I hope that this kind of helps us clear up any of the confusion moving forward. So what I decided to do then is show you an example of a before and an after. So one of your classmates has graciously allowed me to use a post that they put up, and then I went and I took that same post and I added things to it to show the difference between what had been turned in and what I would consider an excellent post. So this was from CPA number 6, and that was on the word recognition strategies. It was the first part that focused not necessarily on phonics, but this was the prompt. Review the word recognition procedure found on page 180 of 181. In this procedure, you'll find reference to many of the strategies discussed in the chapter. Share your experience with teaching word recognition skills. What are your feelings about the strategies? What do you find more useful, less useful, easy for students to use, harder for students to use? If you do not have direct experience in teaching these, share your thoughts about how you would create a program for teaching and word recognition in your classroom, and what might that program look like. In response to either prompt, please provide a robust explanation of the strategies or discussion and your reasoning for focusing on and including particular strategies. So remember, some of the things that I'm looking for when I read these posts are obviously, I want to see you making that connection between theory and practice. And so to me, the theory piece is what you are reading and what you're listening to on the screencasts. So that's the theory piece, and then the practice is kind of how you're describing or your actual own practice in this case. So I want to see that those connections are being made, because they provide me with evidence that you're learning and you're growing in your own practice, and B, that you are keeping up with the course readings and you're keeping up with the screencast, and that you are able to bring your own experience and this new learning together. So that's really important for me as a teacher, as it would be for you in the classroom, to see that students are making these connections and that they are actually learning, and the CPAs are a place where I can do that. So this is the response that was posted on the discussion board. So I think that it is important to keep in mind that the skills required for learning how to read can't be taught in isolation, nor can word recognition skills. I love to teach my students strategies for learning high-frequency words. One of my favorites was letting them select a color to circle all of the high-frequency words of the week they could find in their decodable books. My youngest daughter loves this. She's always peeking over my shoulder saying, "Look, Mom, I see the, he, I, etc." Sound boxes are also a great way to engage young learners. Sound boxes provide a great visual representation of what they hear. This is a great strategy for identifying beginning, medial, and ending sounds. Syllabication is another favorite of mine. My first grader loved to clap out syllables and use their breath to feel the syllables. For older students, the dictionary is a great resource to support this skill. I think that true word recognition focuses more on the automaticity of the process, while word attack skills address the more complex aspect of word recognition, such as Greek and Latin roots and context clues. So if we look at this post, and there is a PDF of this post if you wanted to take a look and print that out as I discuss it. It's in the titanium thread. So the first thing that sticks out to me is when I just look at it, I know that it's short, right? So I know that it's below my 500 words. And it's not even really close. So it's about 200 words worth. And I don't see any evidence of connecting the new learning or the theories to practice. So it's obvious that this student in our class has a lot of experience with teaching word recognition skills. But what I also see in this is that they're looking at a lot of these word recognition skills as skills for phonemic awareness. So I don't necessarily see any connection to the word recognition skills as they were discussed in the chapter that you read. I can see some of this related to phonics, but they haven't described how sound boxes could be used for phonics. I also see that this student hasn't really described what a sound box is. They say that they like them. We know that they're visual, and they say that they help them identify the beginning, middle, and ending sounds. But if another classmate was reading this, they might not necessarily understand what sound boxes are. I also see in this one that they're describing syllabication, which is an important part of word recognition, particularly when we're talking about the phonics for word recognition and some of the higher order phonics skills. But this emphasis on clapping and using your breath, to me, is really, if I was reading this as a student who maybe didn't have a lot of experience with word recognition strategies, or phonics or phonemic awareness, I don't really see how this would help students recognize words. So these are good strategies to use, but their explanation is not that robust explanation I was looking for. So I don't really understand how these apply or how they're relevant to word recognition in particular. And with this statement here on the bottom, while I may agree with the student that word recognition is kind of divided into two camps of skills, again, the explanation here of what the difference isn't particularly clear. And then again, I think that maybe perhaps some of the information that would make this more clear to me or to other students reading it that's missing is the connection to the text. So it's really not evident to me that this student read the text, is understanding how the text and the screencasts are discussing word recognition, but rather they're relying on their own experience and what they already know. So I'm going to pick up on screencast 2, where we will talk about the